Pisha to datri 1011 šarele Assyria TV bafrosejve. وموزة بناو هاوي أسيريا تيفي أوقولو حيرو وأوقولو شاريو دوعا موسريو يببريثو. وأوني جد أسيريا تيفي دماحت فرجونو بوفوكوس ودنوقل عطيبي وشوشو تتكون بين دوعا ميذن لبريثو كولا. لجن أسيريا تيفي تقودر مداوم بوفلحونيفي قلو زملي إم عذرون ثثخو. إذا كورحميتو او شغلوت أسيريا تيفي وكوحوزيتو إلصويثوت أسيريا تيفي بو حقلو دي ميديا مفصوحينا ساقيد معضريتو أسيريا تيفي. درب مشحل في كبخ معضريتو أسيريا تيفي. كبخو هويتو هادومي بو فيسبوك مليونو زوزة ناعيمة. أو إنقلد رحميتو دهويتو هادومي بو يوتيوب تاموستب مليون زوزة ناعيمة. كبعيتو دهو الخوميديا تكتلا قولو حيرو ودلتيو ما صرتو عم قابش وتوسي توكوسي وأوعيتا ووثي مقوايو أسيريا تيفي مقوايو وقولتخو يميديا.
Hello, this is Joseph Pirayou. Sorry, I was distracted a little bit. I want to welcome you to today's program, in the beginning, Ashur. As always, this is the live program. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can make it, and if I have answer for you, I will give it. If not, we do sometimes questions and answers program that we can cover that later. Today's program is about over a month ago. The Hamas group in Palestine or in Gaza Strip, they attacked Israel, and for the past month or so, they've been fighting each other. I don't know how many people have died. Thousands of people from both sides have died. And I was thinking about this conflict that we see now, the history. I wanted to share some history about that area. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. So I'm just going to go over some of that history with this nation, Israel. So I don't know how many of you know the nation Israel was established May 14, 1948. And United Nations, they took votes. United States was the first nation that accepted, confirmed it. But from 48 to now, the conflicts, whatever that is going on, I want to go further back to see how this nation, Israel, was established. Because prior to 1948, the last time there was a nation or a country or whatever you want to call that was named Israel was 2,668 years ago. something around 720 BC. That was the last time there was a nation named Israel, and that nation was destroyed at the hands of the Ashur Empire. Now, today's Israel is called a Jewish state. Now, back when Israel was destroyed or was finished as a nation at the hand of Ashur, at that time there were two kingdoms, Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom. Northern Kingdom was Israel. The Southern Kingdom was Judah, where Jerusalem actually was there. That is the actual Jewish state that lasted until the Babylonians conquered it in 597 BC. However, the name Israel, there was no country named Israel for 2,668 years. When I was looking at our empire, our name, the gap has been 2,632 years and counting since the last time there was a nation named Ashur. Anyway, so as I said, 1948, Israel was established. However, when we go back, it was until 1917 at the hands of the Ottoman Turks. If you're familiar with the history during that time, this is called the Great War. Of course, after that was another Great War, so they call it now World War I. During that time, the Ottoman Turks and the Germans, they were united to fight against the English, French, Russian. Until Russia had their own revolution, they pulled out around 1916, 17. If I remember, Bolsheviks took over. That's when the United States entered the war. And focusing on that area that's called Palestine. Until 1917, it was at the hands of the Ottoman Turks. Early 1917, General Allenby, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that name. I have a photo of this guy. General Allenby with the British forces. Can we show us a photo? General Allenby, he was the commander of the forces that took over Egypt, Palestine, later Syria. He entered Jerusalem 1917. There's a photo. I don't know how much clear it is to show, but this is what they, these are the walls, I guess, of the temple maybe. These are old photos, but I'm glad there is something, historically that shows. So when General Allenby entered and the British took over Jerusalem, that was in the hands of the Ottoman Turks for about 400 years, if I'm not mistaken. Later, towards the end of the program, I will give a history of timeline. That area that is Palestine, and now it's called Israel, the history of who ruled there for how long, under what name. But before we get to that, 1917, when the British took over, and later that year, in November of 1917, there is a declaration, and it's called Balfour Declaration. And let me see if I can read it for you. Can we put it on the screen? So this is from the Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917. And it says, "Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. And it's signed by Balfour, Arthur James Balfour. All right. Now, I was thinking, okay, this guy, James Balfour, he was born 1848 and he died 1930. It's like 13 years after this declaration. He was a prime minister of United Kingdom from 1902 to 1905. At the time that he wrote this declaration, he was a foreign secretary of the United Kingdom. I guess foreign secretary would be Secretary of State in the United States. And during that time, the king was King George V. When he talks about His Majesty. So there are two characters to start with. One is Balfour, then the person that the letter was written to. So we have a photo of this guy, Balfour. I'm just showing you like these people existing. Just want to show you that these are the people that we look at. Okay, Balfour Declaration, Rothschild, General Allenby. These are the people that, it's the other one. The one with the regular clothes. That's Balfour. So we have Balfour here, the foreign secretary that writes this declaration. Do you have that photo again? Balfour? Yeah. Not the declaration, his photo. Just want to give an idea who you're talking about here. No, that's not him. It's the other guy. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's Balfour. Then the other one that he wrote the letter to, Rothschild. There's some history about these people. So as I said, Balfour was prime minister for a few years. Then during the time that he wrote the declaration, he's a foreign secretary or secretary of state. And he writes this letter to this gentleman, Lionel Walter Rothschild. He was born 1868 until 1937. And I was checking on his background. He was a banker, politician, zoologist, and a soldier in the British Army. He had the rank of major. And he was an active Zionist. Now, Rothschild, I don't know how much you're familiar with this. I'm familiar a little bit. It was a very powerful family in Europe. I don't know now where they are. I don't follow up with these. I just, every once in a while, I see on Facebook people posting about the Rothschilds and how they have influence in the world affairs. Well, this guy is a Jewish guy. He's active Zionist. And Balfour sends the letter to this guy. He says, we need, just want to inform you that the British government, with the approval of His Majesty, the cabinet, we have no problem and we will help you, or as you saw in the letter, to establish Jewish state. So where did that come from? 48, Israel became nation. 1917, there is this declaration. After 400 years of that land being at the hand of the Ottoman Turks, the British come, they take over, and right away, 1917, as I said, General Allenby entered Jerusalem, they take over Palestine, and by the end of the year, before the end of the year in November, they received this letter that no problem, establishment of Jewish state, we're with you, Mr. Rothschild. But why? Why would they send this to Zionist. What is a Zionist? For this, we have to go further back. I'm just giving you bits and pieces. I mean, without going deep into it of the establishment and the declarations that they had, what their rules and bylaws were. So when we want to go back, we meet this character, Theodor Herzl. So let's look at his photo. Theodor Herzl. I don't know how much of you are familiar with this guy. He was a Zionist organizer, and he promoted Jewish immigration to Palestine. Now, he was born 1860. There's a reason I'm giving you these dates, because I want to see what the mentality was when, and because 1948, the nation was established. Israel was reborn May 14, 1948. But the events that happened until that date, we go further back. So this guy, Theodor Herzl, was born 1860. He died 1904, even before General Allenby entered Jerusalem. When he died, Palestine, or Jerusalem, the future Israel, was in the hands of the Ottoman Turks. I don't know how many of you remember this book I referred to, that the author is talking about promises in the Bible, and he says there was a covenant that was made between the Creator and Abraham, and he says one of the special features of this covenant is that there is a land consideration which involves the land of Canaan in an everlasting bond, not only of ownership but possession. Evidently, the everlasting possession of that land by its lawful heirs has not yet begun, for at this writing, it is in the hands of the unspeakable Turk. So this guy believes in prophecies in the Bible, writes this book, says, well, it hasn't happened yet because right now it's in the hand of the unspeakable Turk. Okay, Herzl dies 1904. But before that, he's pushing. He's a Zionist. I really don't know what Zionist is. If somebody knows what Zionist is, I'll be more than happy to share that. But these are like Israel, another thing that is called in the Bible is land of Zion. So Herzl is pushing politically. He's trying to organize. Prior to 1904, late 1800s, these are in Europe. He's saying we got to go home. We have to establish our land. We have to get back to, and we are Zionists. You know, there's more detail in that, which I'm familiar a little bit, but that's not the point here. To specifically say what has happened, it was the mentality of who did what when that we got to 1948. So Herzl, 1860-1904, is a Zionist organizer and is promoting Jewish immigration to Palestine on a political level. Now, before him, we go back to popular rabbis. Which one do we have? First one. This guy, his name is Rabbi Zvi Hirsch Kalischer, 1795 to 1874. He dies towards the end or 2/3 into the 1800s. And there is another rabbi, Rabbi Judah Alkali, the other guy here. He was born 1798, Sarajevo, which is still at that time was in the hands of the Ottoman Empire, and dies. He lived about 80 years. He dies in Jerusalem, the Promised Land, even though it was in the hands of the Ottoman Empire. These two rabbis, back in early 1800s, so I'm giving you a timeline of what happened prior to 48, the things that they were happening. So what these two rabbis were talking about. The Rabbi Kalischer is, I think, one of the things I was reading about him is that he's the founder, he was the one that really was pushing for going back to the homeland for the Jews. He was saying, because God had promised Abraham, we are Jews, we are the people of the book, all these things. From his point of view, this guy that you're seeing on the screen, Alkali, and the other guy, Kalisher, they were pushing through religious faith that we need to go back in our country. So that's like mid 1800s, I guess. So mid 1800s, we're looking at something like maybe about a 100 year that, see, I don't know what was going on into individuals' minds, but these two rabbis in mid 1800s in Europe, in different countries, one of them was in Poland, the other one is in Sarajevo, which I guess Yugoslavia used to be. And they're talking. Now, back then, they didn't have the internet that we have today, that every time, be like, you sneeze, the whole world knows about it everywhere. So with the communications that they had through their synagogues, to whatever was happening to them, these two rabbis started something through the faith of the people, because the Jews, their faith and their identity as a nation is the same. They're Jewish faith-wise, and they're Jewish nationalistic-wise, I guess, if that's the right way of saying it. They're Jew. What do you mean? My faith and my identity as a nation. They call the name Israel. One thing that I've heard about when the country was established, they were taking votes on what actually should be the name, because there was a group that they wanted to call it Zion, and there was a group that they wanted to call it Israel. And they took a vote, and I think from what I've heard, by one vote, it was approved to become Israel. But way before that, something started with two rabbis in Europe through faith, to promises made by God to the people. And they started to give people, okay, I know, back in Europe, later we find out, while 1917, another thing that happened after the declaration was that Jewish people started slowly coming into the Palestine area, buying land and settling them among the Arabs slowly. And that's from what I was reading, is that the British government started slowing it down because there were too many of them coming. Maybe because Europe, they didn't know at that time the Nazis would take over and kill 6 million of them. I have a couple of my friends said, no, there were not 6 million, maybe 600,000. Doesn't matter. It's not the number. It's like 600,000. How many of our people were massacred and killed during the genocide of 1914 to 1918, which it didn't stop. Then we have other massacres. It's not the number. It's the mentality of killing people. So the Jews, by their rabbis, later this Herzl, politician, I guess the rabbis made people feel like we need to get back to our land. Herzl came and put a plan, apparently. Before it was completed, he died, but it was in the motion. That's why I was thinking why Balfour has to give a letter to this guy, Rothschild, and there is this other part. Can we show that the one that I picked it from the promise that was made to these people? Where is this promise here? So let me read this for you. In 1917, in order to win Jewish support for Britain's First World War effort, the British Balfour Declaration promised the establishment of a Jewish national home in Ottoman-controlled Palestine. However, the British had also promised Arab nationalists that the united Arab country, covering most of the Arab Middle East, would result if the Ottoman Turks were defeated. When the fighting ended in 1918, with the Ottoman Empire defeated on every front, neither promise was delivered. So even though Balfour Declaration was given, the promise to these Arabs, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence. He's the one that united the Arabs, and we get Saudi Arabia and all these things. In my book, this T.L. Lawrence is a scumbag, is a piece of garbage. Because of his effort, the promises that there were promises made for, there's that declaration to the Jews. T.E. Lawrence goes, unites all these Arabs. However, we were promised our land, the Ashuri people, by the British government. Fight on our side. Help us win. You get your land back. Didn't happen. The Arabs, T. Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence of scumbag. I saw the movie Peter O'Toole was playing. He got an Oscar for it, all this nonsense. I don't mean to get too emotional, but what happened with the Jews was 1917, they got promised, and in that promise, they wanted the Jews to win Jewish support for Britain's First World War effort. Support in what way? Because I don't know if there was any Jewish soldier fighting on the side of the British. However, the support may be monetary. We're talking Rothschilds. So there is financial part that they said, oh, you give us money, financially you support us, you get your nation back. Because when the promise made for us, we fought. We had these, was that unit, the British Army, it's called the Levites. We helped the British. And on the other side, we had General Akapotros, Mar Shumun Benjamin, there was a patriarch of the Church of the East at that time. They fought against the Turks, they fought against the Kurds on behalf of the British. When they won, Saudi Arabia, they helped them, that T.E. Lawrence, to unite, and they made the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, all this nonsense. The Jewish, they didn't get the promise that they had made, but since they had people, they come in, they started fighting against the British. For about 30 years, there was a war, and later they won. There's a totally different subject here. Now, one thing that I was getting this information about the program that I noticed is that the Jewish people were united. Not every one of them is a Hasidic Jew. Not every one of them is like, they have different categories. But they were all united, first through faith, then through the organization of the politics. So they had no problem. No matter what was the conflict between them personally, they looked at the price. They united. How did this happen? Because they had kept their identity. As a Jewish nation, wherever they went, they had their identity, they had their customs, they had their language, they had their faith traditions. They were always like, you could see, oh, this guy is a Jew. They kept it. They kept their identity. That is the problem that we have right now, identity. But what is identity? It's like your name, your language, your culture, all of these things. But hopefully I can cover that next program. So we see that the steps that it took from mid-1800s through faith to politics, individuals, even though they didn't even see it to come through be the fruit of their labor, 1948 it established. Is there a hope for our people? I don't know. One thing that I know, the gap of Ashur nation is 2,632 years and counting. Before I finish the program, as I said, I was going to give you a history of that area. Now, when this war started, I was seeing on Facebook, I have friends that they are like, we are with Palestine. We hate Israel. Then I have some other friends that we are with Israel. Forget Palestine or things like that. Joseph, whose side are you? I'm on the side of our people. Whoever was on our side when ISIS took over and got our people out of their homes and destroyed everything, rapes and all these things that they did, who was on our side, right? I'll be on their side too. Nobody. We are like orphans. We have nobody. We have to take care of ourselves. However, being Hamas, Israel, Palestine, doesn't matter. Let me just give you a history of that area, who controlled it, and the names that are associated with the countries or the power that handled that. I have to thank my cousin, Powell Bet-Avaz, that he put this information together. He didn't do it for me, just put information out there for people to see, okay, this is the history of that area. The reason I'm not putting it on the screen because it's in Farsi, and I'm just going to go over from up until 1948 that the nation was established. We go backwards. We go backwards probably 1,500, 2,000 years. So prior to 1948, as I mentioned, 1917, the British entered. So prior to 1948, you go to 1917, from 1917 to 48, the land is in the hands of the British. It was a mandate by the League of Nations of that time, not the United Nations. Prior to that, from 1917, around that time, until from 1516 to 1917, that's about 400 years, that area is called Ottoman Turk. Why is this cousin of mine is putting this together? He says, I want to find out when was the last time that there was a nation, there was a power that was ruling in that area under the name of Palestine or Israel. So you just want to go through the history. Prior to 1516, that Ottoman Turks took over, from 1291 to 1517, there was this Egyptian rule. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is, it doesn't say like specific, but it was a Islamic rulers from Egypt. Prior to that was the dynasty of Ayyubis until 1099, so the year 1099, and it became in the hands of the Christians. That's when the what they call these wars, that the Roman Catholic Church started it. Then prior to that, we go Byzantine Empire, from 634 to 1099. Prior to that, 634, that area is ruled by Roman Empire. Prior to that, we have the Seleucians. These are the General Seleucus was one of the 4 generals after the death of Alexander the Great, that Alexander's empire was divided by 4 generals. That area that is Palestine or Israel of today was in the hand of the Seleucians. Prior to that, the Persian Empire. Prior to that, Babylonian Empire. Even though the Ashur Empire took care of the northern kingdom, Israel, but the land that Jerusalem is the main thing, was in the hands of the Babylonians. Prior to the Babylonians, as I mentioned, was Judah. Prior to that, goes back to Canaanites, whatever. Of course, for a long time, we're going back to year 1000 500 before Christ. According to my cousin, the information he has provided, not even once there was a government called Palestine ruling over there. I'm not on anybody's side. Why am I bringing this up? Because the country that today is named Iraq, when you go back in history, for a long time, there was a nation, Ashur, there ruling. If we have a claim to that land, we have a proof. As I said, that would be for next program. So that was just the brief history of 48 to going back to 1450 before Christ. 3,500 year history of that land. Now there is a nation called Israel, and they're fighting for their survival. Whose side are you? I don't know. It's none of my business to say whose side, but you see what the history has done. The identity, that's the thing that I'm looking at this. They have kept their identity, because without the identity, there was no way they could be united. Next program, I will give we had this view of what happened with Israel. We'll see with Ashur. Can we get something for our people in the ancestral land? I don't know if we can do that or not. However, the identity, the most important part of this program is maintaining, keeping our identity. Our name is number one. And as usual, towards the end of the program, we have this tradition. We finish it with, as I call the unity dance, Sheikhani, in the name of Ashur Nation. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.
Sheikhani.